Well, this summer it really was a summer of history as the Yankees, of course, saw Mariano Rivera be inducted in the Hall of Fame unanimously, by the way, and he's a big part of why my next guest is able to join me today. I'll wait that in a second. But of course, this past weekend, Pete Alonso making it the rookie record, actually also ensuring that the Yankees and the Mets have the top two rookies in the record books in the home run category. And Jerry Beach joins me now. Jerry, I mentioned Mariano. Well, that's how we first started connecting, because we went to the event up in New Rochelle. How'd you like that event, by the way?
I did. That was first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And it was a nice event. It was it's you don't associate a superstar living in such a low key town like New Rochelle. You picture Tony Estates and upstate or out east on the island or something. But it was really nice to go to that and to see that the mutual love and affection that both sides, both the town and Mo had for one another, and to see Mo's imprint on the town with the church next door to City Hall, and just all the imprints he'd had in the area. It was a lot of fun to see, and a lot of fun to see people come out and line the parade route, and they go up to see him for this the little ceremony they had at the park by the marina after that. So I really enjoyed it. It was like I said, we don't normally associate a small town like that with a superstar and the superstar being as connected to it now as he was when he moved there 25 years ago. But I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. It was a good time.
Now, obviously, you've seen both teams here this year. What are your thoughts on the Yankees really quickly as they head into the postseason? I'm a little worried, to be honest.
I'm in the minority. I've been saying for weeks that I think that Brian Cashman's figured out the way you can win in October in ways you can't win, March or April through September. And, we saw it the last 10 days or so of the season. He'd have, Chad Green or an opener go, and then he'd bring in Tanaka. And I think somebody pitched relief. I can't remember. But he's clearly planning. They didn't get Zach Greinke, who they probably wouldn't have gotten anyway because he had a no-trade clause. I doubt he would have come to New York. But they didn't get that superstar front end of the rotation guy. I thought for sure they get Madison Bumgarner, but the Giants got back into the race and didn't trade him. So I think Cashman's saying, I don't have Verlander, Cole, Greinke, but I can match them. I can match zeros with this loaded bullpen that didn't have Dylan Betances all year and was still, just wave after wave after wave of hard throwing guys. So I know it's kind of a bit of a contrarian streak in me. I don't blame anybody for thinking the Astros are loaded and ready to roll. But I just think, in a short playoff series, I always kind of tend to emphasize or tend to favor, fluky things happening. And, I certainly think the Astros are better than the Yankees right now. And if they played 162 games with their current rosters, I think the Astros would probably win a lot more than, be a lot better than by the handful of games they were better by this year. But I think the Yankees have a real shot. I think they should take care of Minnesota in 4 or so, and they get to the playoffs. And like I said, I understand the Houston rotation's loaded, but you just get it's a juice ball this year.
Yeah,
balls are flying on the parks. If you get 2-run lead and you just build your bullpen, steal a game in Houston, man, you got home field back. And I'm just, the baseball playoffs and playoffs in general, I'm a big proponent of small sample sizes. Crazy things happen. I would not be stunned if it's Yankees-Dodgers in a few weeks.
I would love that. By the way, Jerry, you talk about this weekend, Twins, Yankees, both teams having the most home runs, I believe, of anybody in the league.
Yep.
It's going to be a really big show of sorts this weekend in the Bronx.
Yeah, I was talking to someone this week at the last week at the Mets games, and someone was saying, kind of joking, but somewhat seriously, like the Twins won 100 odd games, but look at that division they played in. They had the White Tigers lost 115, 116, the Royals lost 100. That's like you got to grade that on a curve. That's like a 95 win division anywhere else. Look, I should not underestimate the Twins. I think some of us here, myself certainly included, we look at the Yankees always beat the Twins in the playoffs, so that's got nothing to do with now. 2009 to now, 2003 to now, doesn't have anything to do with it now. But I just feel like this Yankee team, I'm sure people in Minnesota can say the same thing, having seen them more often. But this feels like a team that's been winning the division for a long time. It cleared itself for the Rays pretty quickly. It's positioned for this since 2 years ago when they lost the Astros in Game 7. I think this team is in position. Cashman's built it back up, and I think he changed managers. I think he's been this is their time. I think they expect that this is their time to to make the return to the World Series. It's been a decade, which is a millennium in Yankee years.
Sure.
I think obviously recency bias, location bias, but I do think the Yankees will have a fairly easy time with the Twins, and then get into what should be a great LCS against Houston.
Well, and I tell you, if it isn't the Astros, I'll be shocked. I mean, both the A's and Rays look pretty good, by the way.
Yeah, the AL playoff field is loaded. You got a 96-win Rays team. I think the Oakland won 97 games. Some really good team is going to go one and done. And Cleveland won 93 games and was in the race to the very end. And I think they lost 4 in a row. But there was a time last week it looked like we'd see someone with 95 wins or more left out. And the NL ended up pretty good too, with Milwaukee and Washington getting red hot. But I was thinking
that's going to be a fun game as well this week. Now, Jerry, I got one thing to ask you, or jog your memory a little bit. Last year, the Indians dominate the AL Central, but of course they got swept by the Astros, and it was like, whoa, that's a quick exit for a team that dominated their division. So I could see your point on the AL Central there.
Yeah, it's just look at the AL East had the Orioles lost 108, and the Blue Jays lost 97. So there's never been a bigger gap between the haves and the have-nots in terms of some teams are just they're shedding payroll and tearing it down and hoping they can match the Cubs and Astros. So every division really except certainly the American League, Seattle packed it in pretty early. So every division's got a team or two that everybody else kind of feasts on. So. Like I said, I'm sure people in Minnesota, the Twins have never been there, or at least they got to be the wild card game a couple years ago. But that was kind of they kind of got hot at the end after they traded some guys. This is the first time they've been they've won 100 games in a long time. First time they've really hit the playoffs as a contender. And sometimes those are the most dangerous teams when you don't know you're supposed to be there. Is when you do your most damage. So nothing would surprise me, but I really do think the Yankees are just a better team. They're built for this. I think we're really going to see the strength of that bullpen and the way Cashman's built it out. I mean, any of those guys they have in that bullpen, Tommy Conley could close for anybody.
That's
Zach
true.
Greinke could close for anybody. I mean, they've got so many closers in that bullpen, and they were either winning by a lot in September, or they had a little run where they weren't playing very well. Chapman barely pitched. I mean, they've got so many guys they can throw at you from like the third inning on. That as long as they get a decent first trip to the order from Tanaka, Paxton, Happ, I think they're going to be. I think they can win in a short series with and match the great starting arms that if they get to the second round, Houston's going to throw at them.
Now it's interesting to talk about the Cubs a little while ago. Look, this team, the Cubs. They actually ruined the Mets' chances. By the way, we're talking with Jerry Beach. He's a Forbes sports writer and covers the Mets. And, of course, you were at the series where not only where the Cubs pretty much ended the Mets' year with that sweep, were you not?
Yes. They were feeling real good about themselves before that. That was I think, a Monday through a Thursday or Tuesday through a Thursday. And, they just got swept by the Braves, which was – not great, but that division race was basically over. And then the Cubs come to town and wild card contenders, and you take 2 out of 3 there, you're in pretty good shape. But they just Chicago's had their way with them in New York the last few years. And I agree. I mean, they missed the playoffs by 3 games, and I think they ended up with a better record than the Cubs in the end. But you missed the playoffs by 3 games, and you look at that sweep, and that's clearly the before and after point of from when they were a legitimate contender to when they need a lot of help. And they stayed in the race for a long time, but like Mickey said the other night, Milwaukee just wouldn't lose. I mean,
no, and they almost gave St. Louis a scare too.
Yeah, lost by 2 games and had a chance up to yesterday to force a playoff.
Now, we're talking about Mickey Callaway here for a second. You're kind of on the clock. I think everybody is to see if he returns next year. Is it inevitable he doesn't return?
No, no. I think I was talking to somebody yesterday, a fan, just chatting, making small talk, and he made a good point, saying that the fact that he's in organizational meetings, or I'm sorry, that the Mets are having organizational meetings this week. The fact that he was, Mickey talked about being in a meeting with Fred last week, talking about some of their pitching for 2020. I think that's a sign that, or I was talking to someone who was saying, this could be a sign that the Mets, the ownership wants to keep him, maybe the GM doesn't, and someone needs to be swayed one way or the other during these organizational meetings this week. Because to me, I don't know how you get to, he's got 2 years of time as their manager. We've seen what he can do. We've seen what he struggles with. We've seen his best moments. We've seen some pretty, we've seen the moment with the writer with Newsday that he's not proud of. We've seen a pretty sizable body of work. What's there to get discussed in the next 2 or 3 days? He's managed 324 games with this team. Good, bad moments, everything in between. I would think that you'd know by now, and especially once you got knocked out of the playoff race, and there was no chance to make an World Series run, that you would know by Sunday night you're going to keep him or not. So I think there's some validity to the idea that that there's a split opinion in the front office and ownership, or what to do with them. And what was interesting to me is they really finished on a high note. Like we were talking about, they looked like a 90+ loss team for a while. And he was a fait accompli. He wouldn't be back. And then they had a really good second half. And it's hard to know with the way the manager's job has changed, what his input is in game decisions and how much is of the game is scripted by the front office, and certainly the front office has its hands all over everything. So there's some strange things that happen during the game, and I don't know who to blame for it. But I think all week, I think we all can agree that team played hard for him, and it's a young team, and he connected with them. And last night or yesterday afternoon was a perfect example. Excuse me. He was saying before the game, a lot of the veterans, Cano, Frazier, wanted to play. Those are guys who could easily say, "I'm done. Hey, it's a long year. Let's pack it in and go home." And those guys wanted to play and play a few innings. And Pete Alonso, of course, wanted to stay in the whole game. And they finally got him out in the 11th, and it worked out pretty well because Dom Smith hit the homer to walk it off. But that team was down 2 runs. It's the next last game of the whole baseball season. There was only 1 game left on the whole calendar. And they scrapped back in the 11th inning and won the game.
It was a nice, gritty game to win. And Jerry, I feel like you're saying a little something different than what the papers would be saying right about now. I mean, you're giving us an insight of what you've been hearing compared to, I think, a lot of feelings written in these papers about Callaway. Do you think the media thinks he's going to be gone? Or what is your take on the media's view on his performance?
I think, generally speaking, I can't speak for everybody, but I think the general consensus is, he's in trouble because it's going into his 3rd year. I read it this morning. Somebody wrote, that's when you make a move. We got 1 year left on the deal. It's not a lot of money. He's got a long track record, one way or the other. And, it's a first-year general manager, inherited him. GMs like their own guys. I would say, I think it's more likely than not, he's not back. But I think that there's some signs, like I said, the team playing well, and that the fact that his fate is not yet decided, I think can be construed as a sign he's got a shot. I'd say it's 60-40 doesn't come back, and I do think that's the consensus. I do think the consensus among the writers is that he's probably not coming back. But it's the Mets. They surprise you all the time.
Well,
so,
I got a question. So, are you at Citi Field right now in case they do pull that lever?
No. I think that would be later in the week. My guess, just pure speculation, would be Wednesday, because Thursday is the Yankee workout day, and people be covering that. So my guess is one way or the other we'll find something out Wednesday. But that's just me talking. That may not be the case, but that's my guess.
Talking with the Jerry Beach of Forbes Sports, he covers the Mets. Obviously, he covered Pete Alonso, and what a story this kid is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Pete Alonso and what you thought of him, getting to know him the whole year, and of course, a historic moment.
Yeah, he just came into spring training. Give the Mets credit. They were like most teams. They like to keep these guys down for service time reasons for a couple of weeks or 6 weeks. A couple weeks buys you an extra year of free agency. 6 weeks buys you an extra year of arbitration, or close to 8 weeks, I guess it is. And Brody Van Wagenen said, "Look, we're going to be the best players north of us." All right, that sounds good. And he wasn't kidding. And Pete did great in spring. He hit 4 homers, hit well over 300. Like, all right. And like Mickey Callaway said the other day, okay, if he does, if he hits he had 36 homers in AAA last year. If he hits 2/3 of that and 2/3 of his RBIs, that's a really good year for a rookie. And he just came out of there, shot out of a cannon, and never really slowed down. And that's one thing. The on-field performance is something else. But just such a natural leader, and he's got such natural joy for the game and for being around the game and for being around people. I mean, we saw him on one of the most moving things I've seen was him talking about playing on 9/11 and wearing those cleats that he designed, that he purchased for the teammates, and just what it meant to play in New York on 9/11, and the understanding he had of what that day. He understands. He was 6 years old in 1995. He was a young kid. I'm sorry. He was born in 1995, so he was 6 years old in 2001. He understands that. Like those of us who were in New York that day, whether you lost them or not, you never get over that day. That day, and if you lost someone in those attacks, it never leaves you. And he understands that. He was a 6-year-old kid in Tampa at the time. He just gets New York. He gets New York people. He gets New York fans. He gets Mets fans.
Now, I'm not sure if this was planned or not, but before he hit the homer, but I know he's going to be at the Memorial Museum this week.
Yep, tomorrow. Yeah, he's donating his cleats that he wore on 9/11 to the museum. And I think they announced it like maybe only yesterday, but I know it's pretty sure it's been in the works for a while. So he was he when he won the home run derby, he donated a portion of his winnings to Towers. What is it?
Tunnel to Towers?
Yes, that's it. Thank you. I should know that. I apologize. Yes, he donated a bunch of his winnings to that. So he's always been very supportive of 9/11 charities, police charities in the city. Like, even though he's a young kid from Florida, he just gets New York. Like you said the other day, New York is home now. And he's getting married this winter. He's his girlfriend from Florida, but they're New Yorkers now. And it's just it's really. I wrote something late Saturday night, Sunday morning about last year, as we all remember, David Wright played his last game in game 161. He came back, he got a cameo, just couldn't do it anymore. His body was broken down, and then he's in uniform for game 162. Though he didn't play, and that's it. Then he was done as a major leaguer. And then this year, game 161, Pete Alonso hits a homer, is crying on the field. People are crying in the stands. People get goosebumps. Just like people cried and got goosebumps last year, but for an entirely different reason. And then,
it's kind of special that this happened the 50th anniversary of the championship. Obviously, they didn't get a ring this year, but it had that magical aura that sometimes Flushing has some summers, certain summers.
It did. This team really reminded me. My first real summer covering the team was 1999, and this team reminded me a ton of that team. A lot of endearing personalities, a real ability
Correct
to
me
come
if
back.
I'm wrong. That's the one they won on the wild pitch against the Pirates, right?
Yes. 2 back with 3 to play going into the last weekend of the season. They barely won Friday night, and then the Reds lost. And by the time they took the field Saturday, the Reds had already lost, so the Mets knew if they won out, they'd at least play a playoff game. And Saturday night, Rick Reed threw like a 3-hit shutout over the Pirates. The next day, the Reds and Brewers were in Cincinnati, and it was pouring rain, waiting there all day long to play the game. As you said, the Mets went on a walk-off with Melvin Morris scoring, with Mike Piazza at the plate. And Mets had to wait on the tarmac for like hours to find out if the game was going to get played. And then if it get played, the Brewers got smoked. Went to Cincy, Atlanta threw a shutout, and then Mets got to the sixth game of the LCS that year. And it was just a fun, scrappy team. They dug themselves some holes, dug themselves out of it. That was the year. The next year was 2000. That was the year where Todd Pratt enveloped Robert Ventura after the Grand Slam single.
Yeah, right. And that was a bit rainy, if I'm not mistaken. It was a misty night that night.
Oh, yeah. Pouring rain by that point. Yeah, it was pouring rain. And that always reminds me, when I see Alonso ripping his shirts off guys, I always think of Todd Pratt. Enveloping guys, enveloping Robert Ventura. And he said, Pratt was there earlier this year. He was part of the Mets alumni. And he said that he'd have to complete his his cycle. If somebody had walked it up the night before, he would have. I think someone hit a. I can't remember. I know he said he needed to get someone to hit a grand slam double and a grand slam triple, and involve them at those bases. And he'd hope to do it while the Mets were while he was there that weekend. Didn't work out that weekend, but but they were just an entertaining team and a scrappy team. Some better than the parts, and a real team that kind of embodies the Mets. The Mets are the underdogs in New York City. Let's face it, and they're a blue collar team, and they don't succeed as much as the Yankees. And when they do, it's the fans really celebrate it. And if they could have just a handful of those blown saves, those spectacularly blown saves.
Well, that's an interesting thing you bring up, because obviously Brody had two different compare and contrast here. He had the great idea to call up Pete Alonso, but then Eddie Diaz made that trade. Of course, Cano not running it out early on made that trade make him look a bit foolish his first year.
Yeah. The problem with closers, and I wrote this when it happened, is you can find closers anywhere. Edwin Diaz, finally in September, the Mets couldn't go to him anymore, and they went to Seth Lugo, who was just phenomenal. And Seth Lugo was like a 36th round draft pick out of a Division III school in Louisiana, who was a starter and hurt his back, and he just kind of become this great multi-inning bullpen weapon. Ian Kennedy was a starter for 12 years, and the Royals used him as a closer this year. He was phenomenal. Hansel Robles, the old Met, it was great for Los Angeles, the Angels. You can find closers. I understood. I understood. I didn't disagree with the spin that we're getting Edwin Diaz. He's 24, 25. He was just the best closer in baseball. He had 57 saves. We're locking ourselves up in a position for a long time to come. I get that theory, but closers, it's a short lifespan. I mean, we're seeing it now. Craig Kimbrell is not what he used to be. Kenley Jansen's not what he used to be. Jansen was the only closer this year closing for the same team he closed for in 2016. It's only 4 seasons. So it's just not a position where, and this takes us back to how we started talking. There's not many Mariano Rivera's out there. Mo was a freak in the best possible way. Nobody thought in 1995 when he came to the major leagues that this guy was going to redefine the closer position and earn unanimous induction into the Hall of Fame. He was he scuffled as a starter and honed that pitch and apprenticed behind John Wetland for a year.
Right.
Had a great year, and then
you and I had met, as I mentioned, up in New Rochelle, this unanimous Mariano induction ceremony, key to the city. And I asked you about the Baseball Writers Association. You're part of that, but you cannot vote yet. Is that right?
Right. You got to be in it 10 years, and this is the end of my fourth year. 16. End of my fourth year was this year.
How does one get into that? I'm just curious.
It used to be just for daily newspaper writers, and then the internet came along, and the daily newspaper writers, daily newspaper gigs began to dry up. So there were more publications, online publications that covered baseball on a daily basis. And so they began opening it up to those writers as well, like from Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus, and obviously The Athletic. But The Athletic's fairly new. And for me personally, they also opened it up to people who don't necessarily have a full-time job but cover the sport on a full-time basis. So I write for the field level media wire service, cover all the Mets games. And, we made the case this a couple of years ago. We made the case that, we're not full-time, but we do full-time work. And we're there 75 days a year at home games. So it's a little easier to get into than it used to be. Still not quite. It's still not, it's still a pretty small group. But like I said, you got to be in the group for 10 years before you get the Hall of Fame vote. And this will be in the end of my fourth year. So I like to look at, I'll be voting if the rules remain in place. I'll have a chance to vote for Albert Pujols because his contract expires in 2 years, and then it's 5 years after that. So I do once in a while look at the retiring players or players who are near the end and wonder who I'll get to vote for hopefully in 2026. So
well, you mentioned it that day, and it's kind of true. You might be able to vote him for CC. Is that right?
Yeah. CC's retiring this year, so that's 21, 2, 3. He'll be eligible 25. So I don't think he'll be a first ballot guy. I think he should be. I don't think he will be because, well, I should say that because, the electorate's changing and people no longer, nobody's demanding 300 wins out of a starting pitcher to get in the Hall of Fame. Nobody's demanding a sub-3 ERA. CC's got 250 wins, 3,000 strikeouts. He's won at least one World Series. He's won a Cy Young. His ERA is a little bit high, but look at the area in which he pitched. He pitched he opened his career in 2001 at the height of the steroid era. He's exiting at the during the launch angle revolution with a juice ball. So his ERA for when he pitched is pretty good, and he took the ball every time. I mean, the last few years he's been a little banged up, but he made 500 something starts. I don't know, is anybody ever going to reach that point again? He's the last. He might be the last of a breed. He got up to the majors at 21 and stayed till he's 39. No real serious debilitating injuries. So I think he's a Hall of Famer. People love him. Teammates love him. He's beloved in that clubhouse. He's beloved in Cleveland. Remember we did in Milwaukee in 2008. He was acquired for a deadline push, and he pitched for them on 3 days rest down the stretch.
That's right.
With $100 million contract on the line. Nobody would have argued if he said, "Hey, I'll pitch every fifth day." No, he said, "No, give me the ball. Let's go win a pennant." And so
that was the first time since '82, I believe.
Yeah. First time since '82. They won the wild card, and I would vote for him without second thought. And like I said, in 6 years, by 2025, the electorate's different. I think people will be more appreciative of CC's longevity. I think to me, longevity, especially for a pitcher, is just as important, or almost as important as a brilliant peak, because you got to do something right to pitch, 19 years and win 250 games and make 500 something starts. So my guess is he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, and I'll get a chance to cast a vote for him. But it'd be great if he was already in, and because I think he deserves to be in Cooperstown.
Now, and I know that Yes Network has Forbes Sports Money, but honestly, Forbes is very much a business-oriented, very much economic-oriented magazine. So what's it like to fit in at Forbes? Is that a bit of a niche over there?
Yeah, well, what we do is we're just on the website, the Forbes.com website. The magazine has some sports features, I imagine, but those are penned by staff writers. Forbes has a broad website, entertainment section, a lifestyle section, a politics section, and they use each of these. We try to put, sometimes like in sports, I can't say every story I write has a financial hook to it. Like the other night, I wrote about Alonso. Hitting breaking the home run record. It was just about, like I talked to you about earlier about, the cool passing baton from one superstar to another in Mets history. But I'm working on something, a post probably closer to free agency about the cold market that mid-major guys found this year, the last few years, mid-level free agents. Not the superstars, but the guys who used to get 3 years and $30 million. Are getting 1 year and $1 million. And I talked to a bunch of guys who spoke off the record, to kind of give me their unfiltered take on it. And there's a lot of suspicion, that whether it's analytics, everybody using the same data, or something a little more sinister, these guys recognize that they're being squeezed, and that needs to change in the next CBA, which is due up in a couple of years. So we try to do stories. Like I said, I can't speak for the other sections because I don't write for them. But imagine the entertainment section tries to put what does this mean financially wise for Hollywood or something like that.
Right. Hey, Jerry, what do you think about this idea that these scientists have been looking at the baseball to really modify it in the near future?
I mean, how can you argue that they don't need to modify it? It's just insane. I mean, we're at the ballpark yesterday, and Danny Hechavarria, who's a punch and duty slap hitter for his whole career, is belting opposite field home runs. He's hit 2 homers a game.
And he did that. I remember videotaping it once this year. He hit one with the Mets. That was a big spot there.
Yeah.
He hit an opposite field jack.
Yeah. It's just, I don't understand why baseball changes every year. Two years ago in 17, the same thing. Aaron Judge hit the 52 homers. Giancarlo Stanton hit 59. Clearly the ball was livelier then. That was 0 4. I don't understand why it's so hard just to get a standard baseball to use at all levels of pro ball. But it's we all love the commercial chicks dig the long ball, but geez, it's like we all love dessert, but if you ate chocolate cake 3 meals a day, you probably get tired of it.
That's
That's what
right.
you get with a home run.
Well, and I
It's
do
like, all
miss.
right,
I mean,
enough,
there's also been a
enough.
lot of strikeouts because these guys
Yeah.
are trying to hit every minute, and they strike out most of the time.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
and strikeout has been, back in the day. It's funny to think of this today because Clint Hurdle was fired yesterday, but he said, the Pirates, this is a couple years ago. The Pirates were one of the few teams that wanted to hit and run and wanted to move a runner over and hit the ball to the other side. If guys on third, hit the ball to the right side, bring them home. And he said, there should be shame, something along these lines. There should be shame in walking back to the dugout after a strikeout. Put the ball in play. But that's the minority opinion. 30 years ago, you don't strike out. You feel bad. Yeah, your teammates, they're not happy with it. Your manager's not happy with it. Now it's like, all right, all or nothing. It's the way everybody's playing the game. And they'd rather get a 3-run bomb than have you roll the ball over and make it not that way. They to them, most teams in baseball, the 3-run homer is it's worth the risk for an out. If you strike out, great, it's only 1 out. But if we have a 3-run homer, we got 3 runs.
And they don't really preach shortening up the swing anymore. I remember that phrase, shorten the swing, was a big thing back in the 80s, 90s.
Yep. And Edgardo Alfonso did that better than anybody that I've seen with the Mets. What a great 2-strike hitter that guy was. And he was a power hitter. He could hit 15, 20 bombs a year, but he had a great 2-strike approach, foul off balls, shorten up his swing. And J.D. Davis does the same thing with the Mets now. You notice he gets a ton of 3-2 counts, and he'll just keep wasting pitches, shorten up his swing. He won a batting title at AAA last year. He's a 25 to 30 home run, has the potential to be a 25 to 30 home run hitter. He had 22 this year in fewer than 400 at bats. So that's a lost art for sure. But if you're being told from the time you reach pro ball, hit bombs, strike out, we don't care. Well, what are you going to do?
Well, I tell you,
your job, right?
and for all the stuff that Aaron Judge and Pete Alonso get for the home runs they hit, the fact is they also draw their walks. And you remember this. There were 2 games down the stretch here where Pete Alonso, very patient, drew not a 4-pitch walk, but he drew a walk to win the game both here at Citi Field and also on the road in Colorado during their top of the 9th rally.
Right. Yeah, and Pete, that's something else really impressive about his season is that he had a couple hiccups, a couple rough patches because he's 24 years old. But even Friday night, he a chance to tie. Was it break? Thursday night, chance to tie Judge's record. He went 0 for 4 strikeouts. And he didn't look terrible, but he didn't look himself either. And next day, first at bat, home run, first or second at bat. And Mickey Callaway said, you can just tell him batting practice. He kind of, his swing was smoother. He wasn't as violent. He was waiting on the ball. You could tell whatever had happened the night before, it A, didn't stick with him. It didn't linger in his head. And B, he knew the adjustments he had to make, and he had a good batting practice session, and he hit 2 more home runs, and he has the record. So it's a very uncommon, and the same thing with Judge 2 years ago, a very uncommon, mature plate approach. Because back in the old days, that was the theory. You get these guys will have a hot start, and then the book will be out on them, and then teams will adjust, and then it's up to the player to adjust. But I read something really interesting this year saying that there's no book anymore because everything's in real time. So the pitchers and teams are watching these hitters, and they know exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are right away. You don't need one trip through the league to figure it out. But the same goes for the hitters. There's so much data available. Pete can be watching video on guys he's going to be facing in a month. Pete can spend time in the locker room after the game watching his swing to see where he went wrong. He had a big notebook he filled in all year with his observations of the guys he was facing. So the learning curve is a lot shorter for everybody. And I think certainly the seasons that Judge and Alonso had in 17 and 19 are evidence of that.
Now, I've got to ask you this because as we were talking in July, we talked about how you're in the midst of writing a book. I don't know if you're able to share about that, but it's about the 2000 World Series.
Yeah. The Subway Series is unbelievably 20 years next year. That was why I was up in New Rochelle. I wanted to interview Mo, and I was able to do that for a few minutes. Just about his memories of the series and facing the Mets in regular season games. And it's mostly about the 20th anniversary of the World Series that the Yankees, of course, won in 5 games, but 5 really well played contested games. I believe I just read that it was the first series, maybe ever, or certainly in a long time, to have all 5 games decided by 2 or fewer runs. And the Mets led every game except the second one, and it was won the second one against Mo. They were up 6-0, down 6-0 in the ninth, and Jeff Nelson had a hard time, and Jay Payton came in and hit a homer off of Rivera, which is the last homer Rivera gave up in the postseason. It's just amazing if you think about it. He pitched another 13 years in playoffs and never gave up another home run. Yeah, that's a Hall of Famer right there.
Well, that whole season, and then Mariano, of course, was jumping up and down at Shea Stadium. I think it was Game 5.
Yep.
But that whole year with the Piazza Clemens chaos, and of course the big walk that Benitez gave up in Game 1 itself, all these moments made for an amazing summer.
Yeah, it really did. I was talked to Paul O'Neill about that, and he was like, I wasn't feeling good at the plate. At that point he was 37 or 38. He's beat up. He's like, and back then, Benitez was the outlier, throwing 98. Now it's everybody throws 98. Back then, Benitez was throwing gas, and he didn't see that a lot. He's like, I was just in position. I didn't feel good up there. I knew I was in trouble. Just try to waste pitches and try to drag it out and get a walk. And Todd Pratt is the catcher for the Mets that game. He's like, come on, make it out. Stop swinging. He's like, come on, miss one. And he never did. He kept falling pitches off and worked the walk, and then of course they tied the game and won it. And that really set the tone for the series. Both teams I've talked to over this have said that the Yankees, the Mets, if we can win Game 1, they're behind for the first time in the World Series in 4 years, and they're feeling the pressure. There's no pressure on us. Todd Pratt said we can bloody their nose a little bit by winning Game 1, and they couldn't do it. And then the Piazza Clemens thing, like Todd Zeal said, you could not have. And Todd Zeal is actually works in Hollywood. Sometimes he does some script writing and has been involved with movies and things. His daughter is in This Is Us, and he says you could not script a crazier ending to that whole thing than what actually happened. You pop it up, fine. You strike out, fine. Get a single, fine. What are the odds that he's going to break his bat, on a foul ball, and that Clemens is going to throw it in his direction? I mean, who would think that could happen? And,
I don't think anybody did. And I think, obviously, years later, it was found out he might have had steroids in him that night.
Well, as someone I talked to said, there's a lot of testosterone that night.
Yeah. Well, and that year for me personally was special because I got to know George Steinbrenner, and after the World Series, he had me on the float with him up Broadway. So that was a special year for my father and I as well. So this was I'm going to look forward to reading that book.
Thanks, man. We'll be out next spring, and I'm finishing up the next few weeks, and really looking forward to it because it's funny because I covered the Mets back then, so I still know those guys a little bit. They recognize me, and they're easy to get to talk to. Didn't know the Yankees from a hole in the wall. Never knew any of them, and every guy I've talked to has been fantastic, eager to talk. But I guess when you win the World Series, you'll talk about it, right? that's
well, not only that, they won. That was the third in a row, so that was even what made it even more special.
Right. That's the other. I mean, they were a dynasty already. If you ask me, they'd won 2 in a row and 3 out of 4. That's a dynasty to me. But you win the third in a row, 4 out of 5, and you beat the Mets to do it, and that just shredded any doubt that they were the best team we'd seen since the '70s Oakland A's. And then they should have won in 01. They're 2 outs away from 4 in a row and 5 out of 6. And you can argue that Mo's other blown save in '97 cost him a championship because that field was wide open after that.
Right, and that was when the Indians actually lost on a game-winning single by the Marlins.
Right. I mean, you can make an argument that the Yankees could have won 6 championships in a row. Now, the flip side of that is a lot of the Yankees I talked to said that loss in '97 really motivated them the next 4 years.
And that showed because they all got to camp eager and everything. Of course, the next year I think they had 125 wins. And Jerry, one other thing about that whole 100-plus win thing is that used to be like a source of pride, a source of, wow, we got to 100 wins. Now almost everybody gets there. I
know. We got this year 4, Yankees, Oakland, Houston, Minnesota, and LA, right? Yeah. 4 teams got there. Atlanta got to 97. The wild card teams are talking about 97, 96. Yeah, that's what happens. When you have teams trying to emulate the Astros and the Cubs and going total teardown and hoping to build it back up in a few years, that's what you're going to get. And I always like to say, it worked for Houston, it worked for Chicago, but what happens if the Indians close out a 3-1 lead in 2016 and win the World Series?
Right.
What happens if the Dodgers? What happens if Darvish gets pulled in the first inning of Game 1? Oh, I'm sorry, Game 7. Instead of the second inning, they bring in Kershaw. Kershaw was great that game, but the game was out of hand. What happens if the Dodgers win Game 7 in 17? Well, then you're talking about teardowns that didn't work. Houston didn't win a championship. The Cubs didn't win a championship. How differently are we viewing tanking if those teams fell short? Now, you can say anything about you can say if that, but how many? There's only one team can win a championship every year. What are the odds that Baltimore, Detroit, Kansas City, Chicago White Sox, Seattle, Miami, what are the odds they're all going to win a championship? What are the odds they're all going to see this through and you got to get lucky in the playoffs, as we all know. You got to have some good fortune. What are the odds that they're all going to be able to see this through and get the ultimate payoff for having kicked a couple seasons? Not so good. So, I hope for Detroit's sake that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow after 116 losses. But, I suggest, they're going to get better and they'll get back to the playoffs, but will have been worth, a complete teardown and being not competitive for a couple of years.
And amazingly for Miami, Jeter's lost respect from those in Miami and the organization itself. And I remember, I know you've seen this, a couple guys that are in the Hall of Fame will not go to his ceremony next year.
Saw that.
Should he be in
he didn't handle that. He
didn't
handle that very well. I mean, the Marlins don't have very many legends just because they're not that old. I mean, it's not a knock on them. It's their 25-year-old franchise. If you're going to dismiss, and the guy said, if you want to dismiss, that's fine. New ownership, that's fine. But he didn't do it personally, and then he offered it back at a pittance of what they were making, and it's just not right. It's not fair. But I'll say this: I didn't think he'd rehire Mattingly, and he did. So maybe he took some lessons from that experience and realized you need to tread a little carefully. And it's not Don Mattingly's fault that they lost 100 and whatever games this year. Donnie didn't trade Giancarlo Stanton for pennies on the dollar. He didn't trade Marcell Ozuna. He didn't trade Christian Yelich. So I was glad to see Manley get another shot at it because I think he's good with those young guys. And let's face it, you're a New York guy, you're a Yankee guy. It'd be nice to see Donnie get to the World Series, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And of course, Posada joined Jeter's team
right.
in Miami,
right.
which is pretty cool.
Yep. So hopefully Donnie gets a chance with them down there because he's a good baseball guy and it'd be nice to see. He had the bad luck of getting to the Yankees the year after the World Series in '82 and retiring the year before the dynasty started. And his first year in uniform back, I think, was '04, which was the 3-0 lead that they squandered against the Red Sox. So he's a good guy. I think people would like to see Don Mattingly get a shot at the brass ring before he heads off from the sunset. So.
Well, Jerry, I love this conversation, and we got so in depth, and I want to have you back. Hopefully before the postseason's over, maybe a round 1 recap, round 2 recap, and then some if you're game for that.
Absolutely, anytime. Let me know, and I'm not going to Disney anytime soon, so I'll be able to be in touch with you. And I apologize. I know we wanted to chat early in the summer. I just got kind of hectic with the family vacation and the book, but yeah, absolutely.
Hey, look, it's the perfect time because you could react to Alonso's history, the Yanks' big year, and now it's on to October, my favorite month, partly because I was born in it.
Well, happy birthday. And, I love baseball. The baseball playoffs are the best. Best month of the year is coming up tomorrow. Can't wait.
And hopefully we drop below 90 and maybe 80, 70, 60 to make it a little cooler.
That'd be nice. It'd be nice to have some fall for once, but we'll see about that. I'm less certain about that. I'm more certain about the Yankees making the World Series than I am about that. So
there you go. Hey, Jerry Beach,
yep.
From Forbes, remind us the other network you're with.
Field Level Media. It's a wire service.
And you can be found on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. At Jerry Beach 73.
All right. Very cool. Find him there. Find him writing anywhere and just keep up with Jerry Beach. Thanks so much, Jerry, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Alex. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
I'm Alexander Garrett, and we'll see you next time on Keeping It Real with Alexander Garrett.